questions? You sent me a question? What was the question? Cashews?
Yeah.
If you buy cashews, you're buying them in a box. Usually the box have a kosher sign on it, which you can rely on because it's the fruit doesn't have things, it doesn't have little holes on it that bugs can be on. Bag. Most of the bags of these cashews have kosher signs on them, which you can rely on. Yeah. Which you can rely on. I mean, Ken.
Question: how does someone go from such a low level to
Be one of the greatest minds ever?
yeah.
In the beginning of
From just
a simple story. Okay, so the beginning of your Gemara, every Gemara that you have, it's a tradition. They tell you that you should do these one prayer before you study Gemara, and one prayer after you finish studying Gemara. You know those prayers? So it says, Yhi ratzon mifanecha Hashem Elohai, shelo yira davar takala al yadi, velo yikasher bedvar halacha, v'yismechu bi chaverai, velo omar al tameh tahor, velo al tahor tameh, velo yikashlu chaverai bedvar halacha, v'yismach bahem, ki Adonai yiten chokhma mipiv u'tvuna. Gal einai ve'abita niflaot mitoratecha. So here it says, may be your will, Hashem, my God, that a mishap not come about through me, and may I not stumble in a matter of law, because you're learning, in essence, the root of the law in your Gemara, and cause my colleagues to rejoice over me, meaning other people making fun of you. You don't want to be a center of attention of people making fun of. And may I not say, regarding something which is tameh, that it's tahor, meaning you don't want to be wrong with your conclusion. And may I not, and regarding something which is tahor, that it's tameh, not the opposite. And may my colleagues not stumble in a matter of law, and I rejoice over them. And also you don't want the tables to be turned because the world is round, and it could be that your colleagues are wrong and you're making fun of them. You don't want to be that type of rasha. For Hashem grants wisdom, and then it starts the sources of everything that it says. So the first one is Gemara Masechet Brachot. Gemara Masechet Brachot, page 28b. It says, for Hashem grants wisdom from his mouth, come knowledge and understanding of God. So first here we learned from this blessing, this very simple blessing that you do in the Gemara 1.5 million times probably when you learn Gemara. We notice that there's actually, these blessings have sources from Proverbs, from Psalms, and so on. And one of the most important parts to understand, you learn in Gemara Masechet Brachot, is that Hashem grants knowledge. Hashem grants knowledge. Meaning, Gemara in Brachot, page 63, says, Resh Lakish says, I think it's the end of 62, beginning of 63, Resh Lakish says that someone that wants to learn Torah has to be willing to die for it. From him we learn, he was a famous Baal Tshuva, in the Chavruta of Rabbi Yochanan. From him we learn that in order for a person to learn Torah, they have to be willing to sacrifice. Sacrifice. And depending on the level that you want to reach, he says you should be willing to sacrifice mamash, your life, for learning Torah, for the sake of Torah. But here at the beginning of the Gemara it says, wait a minute, but Hashem gives knowledge, so why should I sacrifice if Hashem is giving knowledge? Shouldn't I stay there and just wait? Stay there and wait until Hashem gives me knowledge? So the understanding here is actually from your story, from the story of Rabbi Akiva. The reason why Chazal tell us the story of Rabbi Akiva, where he first started going to a kindergarten, because he didn't even know Aleph Bet. And he quit because people made fun of him. But then one day he was sitting by the river, and he saw that one of the big rocks had a hole in it. And he asked the people, how'd you make the hole? He said, we didn't make the hole. How did the rock have such a big hole? So actually the water made the hole. And Rabbi Akiva did a kal v'chomer on his own. He did a needless to say on his own, conclusion on his own. He concluded on his own, where he said, if the water that's soft can make a hole in a rock, in a boulder that's hard, with enough pressure, with enough persistence, then obviously my brain, which is soft, will be penetrated eventually with the Torah, that's fire. So that's hard. So the point is that Hashem grants knowledge, meaning that what we're responsible to do is we're responsible to make our effort. Once our effort reaches a certain level, our mesirut nefesh, our sacrifice reaches a certain level, Hashem opens up your brain to get more than what you actually studied. Meaning, Torah is not like learning secular knowledge. So for example, if you learn an hour of secular knowledge, an hour of math, an hour of history, an hour of English, or whatever other thing that's secular knowledge, then what you're going to get is an hour of knowledge. But if you learn an hour of Torah, and Hashem saw that that hour really was mesirut nefesh for you, because you had a stomach ache, you had a headache, kids were screaming in the background, it was tough for you to learn, it was tough for you to sit, I don't know, whatever. You had a difficulty sitting, but you did it, you achieved it. You studied for a full hour, Hashem could very well gift you with 5 hours worth of knowledge. Even though you studied for an hour, He'll give you 5 hours worth of knowledge. You studied for a week, He can give you a month worth of knowledge. So for example, in the Gemara it also says, which Amos said earlier in the Shiur, also connects to it, is that it says that some of the Chachamim in the times of the Gemara would meditate for an hour before they prayed, pray for an hour, and then meditate another hour after prayer. So the sages ask, if they did this with every prayer, that means that they prayed for 9 hours a day. An hour before prayer, an hour after prayer, that's 2 hours. An hour of prayer, that's 3 hours. 3 times a day. 3 times 3 is 9 hours. So the Gemara says, when do they have time to study? If they're praying for 9 hours a day, they're eating, they're drinking, they're with their family, they work a few hours. When do they have time to study? Shouldn't they actually use that time to study? And actually the Gemara answers, Chazal answers, that with that level of prayer, they would actually benefit from that prayer in a sense that they would get more material gifted to them through siyata dishmaya with less studying, meaning they would get more information with less time. So they could get 6 months or a year worth of information through 1 hour of studying. Why? Because of their high level of prayer. So we're obviously not at that level, not only not to get 6 months worth of information in 1 hour, but also to actually meditate for 9 hours a day. I don't think it's possible for anybody, but the point being is that there's something called siyata dishmaya. And there are different reasons of why a person would get siyata dishmaya in their life. First and foremost, you should pray for it. You should pray for siyata dishmaya. You should pray for Hashem to gift you knowledge. Second of all, gift you knowledge for a reason. What are you going to do with this knowledge? You're going to teach it, or you're just going to keep it for yourself? Second of all, there's certain things you can do to be gifted knowledge. The biggest thing you can do to be gifted knowledge is zikuei rabim, kiruv. And the reason why is because when you do kiruv, you're in essence taking your Torah time and you're spending it on other people. So when you finally study, Hashem will give you knowledge. So as strange as it sounds, I mean, I've said this before, but people still fail to believe me. People always ask me, oh, which yeshiva did you go to? How many decades are you learning? And so on and so forth. And, when I tell them the amount of time and so on, it doesn't really make sense. It doesn't make rational sense for someone that did tshuva not too long ago to be teaching with a new shiur every week, a couple times a week for 3-4 hours with new information, Baruch Hashem, every single time. It doesn't make sense. There are rabbis that listen to my shiurim. There are people that Talmidei Chachamim that say they get chidushim from me. So obviously this has nothing to do with me. This is all Hashem. But the point being is that all the information that I learn, I use it for zikuei rabim. I use it to teach people. I'm not using it for my own, pleasure only. I'm using it to teach people. I'm using it to get people to do tshuva, to get closer to Hashem, to sanctify Hashem's name. So, in order for Hashem to get His name sanctified, He has to give more information, because if I give you guys the same lecture every single time, you can stop coming. And the people on Facebook can stop watching. So, of course, I have to study a lot. But the point is that if you compare the amount of studying that I did in my life versus the amount of content that we produced in our life, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. You understand? So that's the biggest thing that you can do as far as to be gifted knowledge. But tachlis, at the end of the day, the biggest thing that you have to get used to if you want to be gifted knowledge is sacrifice. At the end of this series, we're going to get to chapter 6 of Avot. It says there are 48 different sacrifices that a person has to make in order to be gifted Torah. So all of it have to do with physicality, materialism, and so on. The things that we talked about today are just the beginning of it. A person needs to, in order for them to be gifted Torah, they have to literally remove themselves from the mundane. They have to turn themselves into someone that's glued to Hashem. Glued to Hashem, where literally you wake up, Hashem's on your mind. You go to sleep, Hashem's on your mind. During the day, Hashem's on your mind. You're always thinking about Hashem. You're always doing something for Hashem. You're connecting everything to Hashem. You see the sky, you think about Hashem. You see a bug, you think about Hashem. You go to the bathroom, you think about Hashem after you leave the bathroom because Hashem allowed you to go to the bathroom. You ate, you think about Hashem. You said hello, you think about everything you do, you think about Hashem. And somewhere or another, you connect Hashem to everything. And you glue yourself to Hashem. You turn yourself into an Ish Kadosh or Isha Kadosha. And in Gemara, it also talks about how to get to a high level, how to get to Ruach HaKodesh, and so on. And this is one of the key requirements, is to glue yourself to Hashem. Obviously, if you glue yourself to Hashem, you're going to be gifted Torah knowledge.
My question is, how did the rock convince him to make such a big sacrifice? It seems like a pretty simple thing.
Well, yeah, but the thing is, though, is that, like I said earlier, is that sometimes the information that you see or the information that you hear is something you already know. So, for example, in the beginning of the book Mesilat Yesharim, The Path of the Just, the Ramchal in the introduction says to the people, I'm only here to remind you of things you already know. The reality of it is that most of the information he says we don't know. But anyway, him in his humility, he says that he's reminding us of things that we know. And the reason why, he says, because when things are very simple and very common sense, it's even more of a reason for people to abandon them. It's even more of a reason for people to not study them and go into depth with them. Because it's obvious, because it's common, because it makes sense. So for example, all of Musar from beginning to end of Musar is all common sense really. But you don't think about it. Why? Because unless you have a personality trait that likes to dig deep down into yourself, to get yourself into a point of becoming holy, to get yourself into a point of perfecting yourself based on the description of Hashem, not based on the description of society today that's rotten, then you'll see that all of it is common sense. But the reality of it is that since it's common sense, most people think it's not a high level of wisdom, which is quite the opposite. So people like to learn things like alachot or different pilpulim in the Gemara, which is like different things that cause mental stimulation and things that are like tongue twisters and such. Things that are difficult and for the purpose of mental stimulation, because they think that things that are mentally stimulating are going to make you more holy. It's actually quite the opposite. It's actually quite the opposite. It's the things that make you holy are perfecting your midot. It's the basics that actually make you holy, not the things that are complicated. So, unfortunately, people, are either misled or confused or whatever it is, misguided. The point being is that even though it all made sense and the rock, and the story from an outside perspective made sense to you from where you are right now, to him it didn't. Just like I could tell you something that could make sense to you and it could change your life, but to another person it's just, I knew it. Different people have different visuals. We could both look at the same page of Gemara and get different understandings from it. We could get the pshat of the same Gemara. We both get the basic meaning of whatever Gemara or whatever pasuk in the Torah. We both understand it. We both see what Rashi says. We both see what the Torah means. But then you can potentially get a chidush out of that pasuk that's different than mine. So I'll give you an example. Some months ago, maybe 6 or 8 months ago, I had a chidush about this week's parasha. Even though it wasn't a parasha, I had a chidush about this parasha. So, for example, there's a when Yaakov goes to Yitzchak Avinu to get the blessing. Now, he's pretending, in essence, to be Esav, right? He's pretending to be Esav. So Yitzchak says to Yaakov, Akol kol Yaakov, va'edayim yedei Esav. The voice is the voice of Yaakov, but the hands are the hands of Esav. So the pshat is very simple, that Yaakov had a voice that was distinctly his, that Yitzchak identified, but the hands were Esav's because he had his mom, Rivka, put fur on his arms to make him seem like he's hairy like Esav. That's the pshat. That's the basic meaning of the verse. Now, you could have additional chidush on top of it. My chidush was quite different. My chidush was in regards to both the fake rabbis and the missionaries of the world today, applying it to today. Because both the fake rabbis and the missionaries, the messianics of today, both sound like Yaakov. They both sound like Am Yisrael. They both sound like kosher rabbis. They both sound like they're teaching Torah. They both sound like they're trying to help people. They both sound like Yaakov. But Yadayim Yedei Esav. But really their actions are Esav. You understand? They all sound kosher. The rabbi with a nice trimmed beard looks like a runway model. Sounds great. Sounds kosher. The fact that he wants to bring the #1 missionary in the world into a Beit Knesset with 1,000 families, I don't know if he's Esav or Esav is coming. I'm not really sure. Either way, it's not kosher. You understand? So, Akol Kol Yaakov, if you listen to this rabbi, he sounds perfectly kosher. He sounds great. He knows Talmid Chacham, Dayan, writes blogs. Everything sounds great. Sounds wonderful. But in reality, the actions, the bottom line, it's Esav. 100% Erev Rav. 100% Erev Rav. Same thing with the other guy that I talked about all the time. And I don't mention these names because it's just a waste of time. And also, I think it's like Beetlejuice. You bring him to your life when you say their name. But the point is that, the other guy with the long payas that reached the floor, a guy that's creating his own religion, he sounds like a kosher rabbi. He sounds like a perfectly kosher rabbi. He doesn't sound like a Esav, Rasha. He doesn't sound like Haman. He doesn't say, he didn't write Mein Kampf like Hitler or anything like that. He doesn't put his arm up or anything like that. He sounds and looks like a kosher person. But so did Esav. He tells you, he says emunah, he says bitachon, he says Hashem. He uses the same lingo I do. He uses the same lingo as any rabbi, really. But in reality, he's Esav. In reality, he's a liar. In reality, he's a filthy liar. In reality, he's a big sinner. He creates his own religion, creates his new rules, and so on. And unfortunately, there's many like it. So that was my chidush from that verse. So you had the pshat, which is completely different. Then you had, what I had as a chidush from that verse. You could look at that verse and it could mean something completely different to you. Why? Even it's the same 6, 7 words. Your perspective and my perspective will never be the same. We could agree that mine is right and yours is right, even though they're different from each other. But it doesn't necessarily need to be the same. So, you could look at the rock now from the story perspective of the Rabbi Akiva and say, oh wow, that makes perfect sense. Why didn't he know it? Because you're looking from an outside perspective. It's much easier to see things clearer from an outside perspective than when you're actually in the fire yourself. So for example, it's much easier for me now to say that suffering is good for you today when I'm not suffering like I did 7 years ago or 8 years ago, 10 years ago when I had the surgery. So again, different perspectives, different times of your life. Next.
Can someone even begin to do tshuva if the person is currently in the sin?
He's continuing to sin?
Yeah, the sin has not been stopped.
No, you can't. No, I mean the first stage is to stop sinning. The first stage of tshuva is to stop sinning. If someone knows that they're sinning and says, I'm going to continue sinning, but I'll do tshuva tomorrow, there's actually a Mishnah about them. So it says someone that says, I'm going to sin and then do tshuva. I'm going to sin today and then do tshuva tomorrow. The punishment for such a person that makes a mockery of the system mockery of Hashem, says, I'm going to sin today and do tshuva tomorrow. Like knowingly they're sinning and knowing with a plan to do tshuva. I'm going to do a barbecue this Shabbat, but then I'm going to do tshuva on Sunday. Someone like that, what's their punishment? Punishment is a specific Mishnah written about them. Someone like that, Hashem does not allow them to do tshuva. Hashem does not allow them to do tshuva, meaning they won't live long enough to do tshuva. Hashem kills them before they do tshuva. He won't allow them. Why? Because they made a joke of the whole thing. So someone that's still sinning, it's better that they don't say anything at all than saying they're doing tshuva, because they're not, it's the first step of doing tshuva is stopping the sin. Next. So Hashem Barach says that Shabbat is a brit beni ubenechem. It's a covenant between me and you, because I created the world in 6 days and I rested on the seventh. Meaning, Gemara Masechet Shabbat says that anyone that wants to become a partner with Hashem Barach, keep Shabbat. What does it mean becoming partners with Hashem? Now, when you see that Hashem doesn't say, I am the God that created the world. For example, when he says in the Ten Commandments, he doesn't say, believe in God because I'm the God that created the world. He doesn't say that. He says, I'm the God that took you out of Egypt. Right? I'm the God that took you out of Egypt. Why? Because you witnessed that. You witnessed that I took you out of Egypt. But in order to become a partner of mine in creation, you have to, in essence, believe that I created everything. So, Shabbat is that covenant that, in essence, stamps that you agree that I created the world in 6 days, and I rested on the seventh, meaning I stopped creating on the seventh for your purpose. I didn't stop for the seventh day because Hashem needed rest. Lo yishan v'lo yanum. Hashem Yitbarach doesn't sleep, doesn't rest. So, in essence, Hashem Yitbarach really created the world in a moment. He didn't create the world in 6 days. He created it in a moment. He put the pieces, he slowed down creation, and put the pieces in place. So the sky, the sun, the moon, the dirt, whatever, all the pieces in place over 6 days. So he created everything in a moment, and then he put like a puzzle, and then he put the pieces in place over 6 days, and then on the seventh day, he did the exact opposite of what he did during those 6 days, which is, he stopped creating. He didn't do anything. In essence, he created Shabbat. He created nothingness. He created resting from all of the activity that he did, and not doing those melachot. So, why did he do that? He did it because he says, if I bring man into the world now, every day, and I tell him, listen, you have 6 days, 6 days I created, you're going to create 6 days. So in essence, every day is the same. Nothing ever changes. On the other hand, if I stop creating on the seventh day, then that one day is different. There's one day that's significantly different from the rest, because there's one day that I'm not creating. So, in order to give man the state of mind or feeling that Hashem had, if you will, on the seventh day of not creating, Hashem says you also have to not create. Because you create throughout the whole week, you have business, you write, you do all these different things that throughout the, you do the mundane for 6 days a week. So if you did it 7 days a week, then there would be no difference. Every day would be the same. So if you stop creating, in essence, you're doing the same thing that I did when I created the world. So you'll have your human version of the feeling that I had on the seventh day. So he did it for us. He didn't do it for himself. He did it for us, in essence, to make us feel like we're part of creation. In order to make us feel like we are partners with him. So now, when someone did all the work, paid for everything, built everything, created everything, did everything, and then he says, hey, by the way, we'll be 50-50 partners. I did everything. I paid for everything. I invested all the money. I designed everything. I hired a team. I advertised it. I marketed it. I did everything I did. But by the way, me and Betzalel are 50-50 partners. If Betzalel says, nah, I don't feel like it. It can't be more insulting than that. And not only if he says, no, I don't feel like it, but he takes the water and he spills it in my face. I don't have any more left, so I can't spill it in his face. But in case he spills it in my face, no, not only I don't want to be partners with you, but he spills the water in my face. It's not nice, right? It's very mean. Because I paid for everything, I marketed everything, I invested everything. At the very least, you say yes and say thank you. But not only is he not saying thank you, he's spilling the water in my face. In essence, when someone desecrates Shabbat, that's what they're doing to Hashem. Because Hashem created everything, did everything, and even rested just for you, to feel like Him. And instead of saying thank you for giving me a vacation, thank you for giving me a feeling like you, thank you for making me a partner in creation like you, instead of saying thank you, we take the water and spill it in his face. It can't be worse chutzpah than that. So that's at least one explanation of why. Second explanation is that in essence, the Gemara, the Pshat, is that Hashem says, I created the world in 6 days and rested on the seventh. If you're a partner of mine, that means you are, in essence, a witness to creation. It's as if you were there when I created the world, which means that if you are not keeping Shabbat, you are acting as if you're a witness that I didn't create the world, meaning you're denying that Hashem is the creator of the world. You're denying that Hashem is the creator of the world, meaning that you're saying that, not you, but someone that's not keeping Shabbat, is saying that Hashem is not the only God. There is another God. So that's why the Shulchan Aruch in 7 different places, including Alachot Shchita, says that if a Mechalel Shabbat slaughters an animal in the most kosher way possible, he's a professional slaughterer in a kosher way, he slaughters a cow, you're not allowed to eat it. Why? Because he's considered 100% an idol worshiper. Even though his father's a rabbi, his grandfather, even though his Avraham Avinu is his father, Yitzhak Avinu is his brother, Yaakov Avinu is his son, doesn't make a difference. If he's a Mechalel Shabbat, he's considered Esav. He's considered an idol worshiper. So you're not allowed to eat a shchita. Shchita even. So why? Because he's denying creation. He's denying that Hashem Yitbarach is the only God. Yeah.
What are some of the mitzvot associated with the disease of the ego? Because what Esav
It's getting mitzvot.
was intemperance. He had no intemperance whatsoever. Couldn't control himself or hold himself back.
Right.
But the same thing could be displayed to different areas of one's character or personality.
In essence, being a glutton. Being a glutton is really what Esav was. Esav was a glutton, meaning that everything that he liked, if he liked food, he had to have it. He couldn't restrain himself. If he saw a woman, he had to have her. Didn't matter that she was married. If he saw gold, he had to have it, even though it belonged to someone else. He was a glutton. And unfortunately, gluttony is a very, very, very horrible sin. Very horrible sin. That's why it's for example, when in the book of Jeremiah, it says, Im taviya karmi zolel kepitiye. If you bring a precious person from a glutton, you will be like my mouth. So in essence, here, this is the blessing for anyone that does kiruv. It says, if you make people do tshuva, then your whatever you say will come true. Meaning that even if Hashem decrees for someone to die, if you pray for that person that does kiruv, prays for them, he could potentially undo that decree. But the point of why I'm trying to mention this is that the definition of someone that needs to do tshuva is a glutton. Zolel. Zolel means glutton. So it says, if you turn a glutton into someone precious, you'll be like my mouth. Meaning that the worst possible thing you can be is a glutton. So people that can't control their food. Every time they see food, the whole world stops. They have to eat as much as they can grab. It's like they grab it like they've never eaten in their life. It's like everything is Chinese food. Kosher. But anyway, the thing is though, is that people that are gluttons, unfortunately, they get to be a glutton in everything. If they're a glutton in food, they'll be a glutton with money. They'll be a glutton with women. They'll be a glutton with everything else. And unfortunately, is that this is a person that's putting themselves in a scenario where they'll never be happy with what they have. The person that's happy, we learn in the Mishnah in Avot, a person that's happy is a person that's happy with his share. That doesn't mean that he's happy because he's homeless. If he's happy because he's homeless, he's just a fool. Meaning, happy with his share is that he knows that whatever he has, Hashem knows for sure this is what he deserves, this is what he needs, this is it, this is great, this is wonderful, this is the best you could possibly do. But you could always pray for more. A person that's a glutton, meaning that it doesn't matter how much he has, whether it's a little or a lot, it's never enough for them. Such a person will never be happy. Will never be happy. So you can give that person $100, it's the same as you gave them $1 million. They'll never be happy. You give them one car, it's the same thing as you gave them a million cars. They'll never be happy. They'll always want more. And the Gemara says you give a person 100, he wants 200. You give him 200, he wants 400. That's the definition of a glutton. So that's a very, very bad sin. It's literally the definition of someone that needs to do tshuva. I mean, obviously, there's things that go off of it and so on, but the point is that a glutton is a bad place to be. But unfortunately, this is the Esav trait in all of us, that all of us have some type of gluttonous trait in us, whether it's for food, or it's for buying material things, or different things. So the key is to understand what this Mishnah says. First and foremost, understand that only this life is designated for you to do tshuva. Only this life. There's no other life for you to do tshuva in. There's no like second time or third time or fourth time. You have to do tshuva here. There's no other opportunities. A lot of people say, no, but you can get reincarnated. Yes, you can get reincarnated, but as a dog, or as a plant, or as a cow, or as the wall, or as a book. I mean, it doesn't necessarily, there's no guarantee that you'll be reincarnated as a Jew. There's no guarantee you'll be reincarnated as a person. Depends what kind of sins you're making. And also, what if the Mashiach comes? Then there's no reincarnations anymore. You understand? What if you ran out of choices? What if you already reincarnated 50 times already? Like, people want to, think that reincarnation is like a great thing. It's not. It's not. You shouldn't look forward to it. Meaning, your chance to do tshuva is now. You're brought to this world to do tshuva now. Not tomorrow, not next week, not next year, not next life, not next Gilgul. Now, today. Start now. Ready? Go. What else?
Is there a source for people who light Shabbat candles and then they still do things to get ready for Shabbat?
Yes. The times that are published on websites and newspapers are times that to light candles for Shabbat, but that's not the actual time that Shabbat starts. The time that Shabbat starts is usually approximately 18 to 20 minutes after lighting candles. So, the tradition in Sephardics is that you could actually elect mentally that even though you're lighting the Shabbat candles, you're not accepting the Shabbat on yourself until the time Shabbat begins. So let's say 18 to 20 minutes later. Ashkenazis don't have that leniency, from my knowledge. So as soon as they light the candles, Shabbat begins. So that's the Poskim rule that way. But it's different with Sephardics and Ashkenazi. If you're Ashkenazi, you have to hold by the Ashkenazi Poskim. If you're Sephardic, you have to hold by the Sephardics. You can't do mix and match. It's not a puzzle. So as far as the people that are doing other things, whether it be driving to Beit Knesset after they light candles, or it's whatever it is that they're doing after light candles, it's perfectly fine if they're Sephardic. But if they're Ashkenazi and they already lit candles, then they cannot do it. But sometimes the wife will light candles, but the husband didn't. The husband already left. That's fine too. That's fine too. Death with worms?
Yeah, like,
Meaning what?
like if you die, let's say you don't want to be overweight because it will...
Marbe basar, marbe ima. We learned it in the Mishnah. Someone that is fat, they could potentially give more food to the worms when they die. So your question is, how do you avoid that? Why is that? Because it's a natural part, because all of us at some point are going to have a separation between the body and soul. The real you is your soul. The body is like clothing. So eventually the body stops working, the soul leaves. So that body has to go somewhere. And that somewhere that Hashem decided is to become food for worms and maggots. The soul, on the other hand, goes somewhere else. So now, as far as if somebody is fat in their life, and they're fat because they're a glutton, then this is one of the punishments for being a glutton. But if they're fat for a result of holiness, like Rabbi Eliezer ben Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Elazar ben Rabbi Shimon, then it's they don't get eaten by the worms. It depends why they were fat. So for example, Rabbi Eliezer ben Rabbi Shimon, he was a Kohen, so he would eat an enormous amount of meat, and he was huge. He was so big that him and another one of the Chachamim at the time was so big that they would put their stomachs together, and it was big enough for a bull to walk under them. A bull, a huge bull, 2,600-pound bull, would walk under both of their stomachs. That's how big they were. But he actually, in the Gemara Bava Metzia, wanted to see if he sanctified his meat, if he sanctified his body, as much as he sanctified his soul. So there's a Gemara in Bava Metzia that says that he wanted to test it out. So he had a very, very complicated surgery, which today we call liposuction, already 2,500 years ago. He had a liposuction surgery where they took out 3 barrels, or 3 buckets, 3 buckets full of fat from his body, which according to medicine today, according to doctors today that are experts in liposuction, they say it's not possible. So apparently the Chachamim had more advanced technology 2,500 years ago than the doctors today. So they took out 3 buckets full of fat from his body, and then after he recovered from the sum, they gave him anesthesia to go to sleep so he doesn't feel the pain. When he woke up, recovered, he took the 3 buckets and he left them outside in the heat during the summer. Now if you put a steak, you take a piece of steak, cooked or uncooked, and you put it outside here in this Gehenom desert, Florida that we live in, 95 degrees every day of the year apparently. You put it outside, 15 minutes later you have maggots, worms, and their friends coming out of this steak. Doesn't matter if it's kosher steak, non-kosher steak, there's going to be worms and stuff coming out of it within minutes. If it's a pork, by the way, you don't even need to put it outside. Just pour Coca-Cola on it. Pour Coca-Cola on a piece of pork and worms and maggots come out of it. There's always worms and maggots in pork because it's a filthy animal. But anyway, so any piece of meat you put outside, it stays out long enough in heat, worms and maggots will come out of it. So now Rabbi Eliezer went outside, put 3 buckets of fresh human fat outside. At the very least, you're expecting flies. At the very least, you're expecting a few worms. At the very least, you expect it to smell bad. He left it there for, I believe it was weeks. Weeks. Came back, looked at it, not even one fly. And that's when he was happy about himself, and he says, oh, Baruch Hashem, I sanctified my body. So, I don't know if we can actually get to a point of being like Rabbi Eliezer, where we can sanctify our body to that extent, but at the very least, we should be very excited to sanctify our soul. If we sanctify our soul, I don't think you have anything to worry about as far as your body. Same price. Esav?
Esau didn't have runner-up before he was born, because and how come he was attracted on his holiness? And the second question is, what exactly does it mean that an angel teaches unborn child the whole Torah?
There's actually an angel that each and every single person has. That teaches them the Torah when they're in their mom's belly, and this is the Zohar Kadosh. Also talks about it in the Gemara somewhere. And when they leave, when it's time for them to be born, the angel hits them on the lip one time and makes them forget everything. But that's why sometimes you'll learn Torah. And sometimes, even though it's the first time you're learning something, for some reason or another, it makes more sense than it should, meaning you understand it or you remember it from somewhere, even though sometimes you've never learned it before.
How much Torah was actually taught?
Everything that you're ever going to learn, you already know. That's also in essence how Hashem makes the knowledge that He gives you gifted to you. You already know it. It's just really a matter of Him releasing it.
It's only what the person knows, not only what the person could know, not the whole Torah.
Everything. You can learn everything you want. You could become Moshe Rabbeinu. You could get to higher levels than you could even think imaginable. You get to a point where the Torah can give you a physical reaction. A lot of people don't know this, but the Torah can actually give a person a physical high, a physical reaction. Not just a mental stimulation where you're happy about it and it's nice and wow, I have a chidush. No, I actually mean a physical reaction. A physical reaction where your whole body is buzzing, you feel like you're on cloud 9, you're in a different world, like that. A piece of Olam Haba. You can get to that point. So the amount of Torah you can get to is much, much more than you can imagine at this stage. Point being is that the Yetzirah Tov, the angel, already taught you all this Torah. Now when you were born with the Yetzirah. Now Esav, like any other person in the world, had inclinations. He had a desire for certain things. Just like you have a desire for certain things, I have a certain desire for certain things, a certain attractiveness that you have. So for example, some people are born with the attractiveness to blood. Attracted to blood. Blood sometimes skeeves people, makes them disgusting, or makes them, afraid or sick. But some people, not only they don't mind it, they like it. It gives them a certain strange pleasure. Now, that person that has this desire for blood can choose what he wants to do with this desire. He can either choose to be a murderer, so he can see a lot of blood before he goes to jail and they kill him, or he can become a butcher, or he can become a surgeon. Meaning, everything that Hashem gives you as a desire, as an inner desire that you're more inclined to do, you can use for good and for bad. So all of the character traits that Esav had, he was able to use for good or for bad. That strength that he had, he was actually able to fight evil better than Yaakov was able to fight.
Let's say he was already like that before he was born.
No, he had an inclination. He had an inclination towards avodah zarah, towards bad things. Doesn't necessarily mean that he was predestined. No, he was predestined. He was predestined to have a certain desire for certain things. Some people have a desire for women. Some people have a desire for same sex. Some people have a desire for food. Some people have a desire for different things. He had a desire for avodah zarah. But it doesn't mean that you have to practice it. You could potentially become an anti-missionary. You understand? With that same desire, you can do a lot good and bad. So there's, for example, some people, like this Rasha named Michael Brown. He's actually a Jew from what I know. He decided that his desire for avodah zarah means that he has to practice avodah zarah. He has to practice idol worship. So he's a missionary, and he pretty much tries to recruit as many Jews as possible to go to avodah zarah, to Christianity. Now, another precious soul is Rabbi Tovia Singer, who's a big tzaddik, and he knows more than anybody, including this Michael Brown Rasha, about both Christianity and Judaism, and he uses that knowledge and that skill set and that desire that he has to know the truth in order to be anti-missionary. You understand? So you have similar, if you will, talents on both camps, but one is using it for evil, which is Michael Brown. One's using it for good, which is Rabbi Tovia Singer. You understand? So every single person can use whatever Hashem gifted them for good or bad. That's where free choice comes in. That's where Yirat Shamayim comes in. Next.
So today, if someone who would happen to call himself a rabbi, and when you look at his behavior, he's following the footstep of JC. What he does pretty much is pointing out things in mainstream Haredi practices,
Yeah.
and then make a big deal out of it. Like somehow the Haredi get it wrong, but he gets it right.
Yeah, I mean,
And
people.
attacking rabbis that are doing kibbutz.
Yeah. I mean, people like that, unfortunately, are kofrim, and eventually they are going to have to pay for their sins. Put it this way: there's nothing stupider. There's nothing stupider than being a machtia rabbi, meaning being someone that causes other people to sin. Except one thing. There's one thing that's stupider than causing other people to sin, which is not only causing other people to sin, but to stop other people from doing tshuva. So not only are you causing them to sin, but now you're stopping them, you're getting in the way of them doing tshuva, of them stopping to sin. In essence, you're double impacted. You've put a baking egg and cheese on Yom Kippur. So now some people are stupid enough to do this by going against kiruv. So they go against kiruv rabbis that actually do real kiruv, and they call them out, they make videos about them, they do all types of things to discourage people from listening to them, and there's nothing stupider than doing that. Now, I can say it until I'm blue in the face, and it's not going to stop. There are plenty of rabbis here and overseas that take my CDs that I sent to people for free, and they take them, and instead of letting people have them and listen to them, they take them, they steal them, and then they throw them in the garbage. So they rather steal something that doesn't belong to them, steal my CDs that are full of Torah, 76 hours worth of Torah. They rather steal them and not allow people to listen to them and throw them in the garbage. So they rather make a sin of theft than let people listen to them and do tshuva. And I'm not just talking about people in Florida, like the place I lived in Boca Raton. It's not just a place. It's also in other places in Florida, also in New York, also in Arizona, also in overseas, in Europe, in Australia. There's plenty of places where people told me, I saw with my own eyes, the rabbi took the CDs and threw them in the garbage or hid them and then tried to throw them out. Plenty. There's somebody in this room right now that told me he saw it with his own eyes. It's not, I'm not making this up. Plenty. Why? Because they're Reshaim. Because they know that if people listen to our Torah, they'll actually do tshuva. And the first thing they do when they do tshuva is leave their Beit Knesset. Because their Beit Knesset is full of kfirah. They're reform, they're conservative, they're garbage. First thing they do is leave them. So they don't want them to leave. They'd rather people not do tshuva. So now people like that are stupid. And the reason why is because they could have easily been absolved of their sin by having the people leave quietly, go to a different Beit Knesset, or at least, at the very least, do tshuva, and they come to their Beit Knesset and do tshuva in their Beit Knesset. So at least they're not at fault for this person going to Gehinom. But now they're getting in the way. So there's a few people I could tell you that have done it, and I know the outcome already. One guy went against tshuva about 2 years ago. About 3.5, 4 months later, he got cancer. Another guy went against kiruv. About 7, 8 months later, his son died. Another guy went against kiruv, and less than a year later, I think it was maybe 8, 9 months later, he had a kid born, spent almost a year in hospital. And another one, recent, made a video about me, going against kiruv, making fun of me, and all types of wonderful things. He just announced on Facebook that he's getting a divorce. He just announced, even though somebody made a comment on his channel saying, wait a minute, didn't you just post pictures of you and your wife being happily ever after, and everything is wonderful, and she has a kisui rosh, and she has this, she has tzadikah and everything. Why are you saying you're getting a divorce? What happened? So this same idiot continues to say Lashon Hara about me, continues to make a mistake, and he still doesn't understand that that's the root of his problem. The stupidity of men will cause one to sin, and then he gets mad at Hashem for punishing him. And the idiot, instead of looking in the mirror and realizing he's the root of the problem, what does he say? Oh, I never really wanted to fulfill this mitzvah, but right now I have to fulfill the mitzvah. It's a mitzvah nonetheless. Divorce is a mitzvah nonetheless. Like he thinks he's doing a mitzvah. First of all, you're publicizing something that's not good. Second of all, you're embarrassing your ex-wife in public. Third of all, it's lashon hara. It's rechirut. It doesn't end. The guy just can't stop sinning. And then, not moments later, he makes another video about me. So, I mean, these people, I mean, it doesn't get stupider. Like, you can hit them in the face with a bat and they still won't get it. They're just stupid. They're just, I mean, I feel bad for them. I really feel bad for them. Because to me, it doesn't affect me. I don't care. He can do whatever he wants. It gives me more schuyot. It helps me. It doesn't hurt me. Every mitzvah he actually did by accident, I get. It doesn't hurt me. I don't care. It doesn't make a difference to me. I'm not going to stop. You know, so it's not. It's just a silly thing. A guy is just destroying his own olam haba, and he's getting punished now. He's getting punished now, and he still doesn't get it. So him and other people that go against kiruv, they're just, I don't know, miskenim. I feel bad for them. Honestly, I really feel bad for people like that, because just like, it's like the guy is eating poison and he expects the other guy to die. He's like, you know, he's drinking poison like a milkshake, but he's expecting the other guy to die. I mean, it's just, look at the guy. You want to like biff him in the head. Like, come on, man. At least if you're going to be a Rasha, do it right. Be like Esav. Do something. Can't even be a good Rasha. You're not even good at that. So, you know, people are stupid. But, I mean, listen, the thing is, though, is that sometimes Hashem punishes people right away. Like the few that I mentioned here. Sometimes Hashem takes a while. You can wait 20 years to punish somebody. 20 years. You can wait for somebody to get and punish them. 30 years, 50 years. You know, it's not everybody just goes against kiruv there, because if that was the case, you know how many people would be dead right now? You know, so whatever. Hashem has patience, Baruch Hashem. Hashem has patience. But the people that are calling themselves rabbi, not calling themselves rabbi, doesn't really make a difference. The rabbi title doesn't change anything. If they're saying things that are against the big chachamim, if they're saying things that are against the Torah, if they're saying things that are unacceptable by Torah standards, if they're going against the sages, if they're going against different parts of the Torah, there's nothing stupider than them. Because you know what, the reality of it is that even a few, let's say for example, there's a few that like to go against the Zohar. They like to go against the Zohar. They say the Zohar is not authentic, and there's enough evidence about it that say that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai didn't write it, and ta-da-da-da-da, and they go all through all this thing. So you have one camp, a very, very small camp of people, say that it's not authentic, and it's not this, and it's not that. And then you have the vast majority, which not only say it's authentic, but say that it's Zohar Kadosh, it's a holy book. So now, even if you're in a camp that doesn't want to accept the Zohar, if you're in a camp that doesn't accept it, doesn't want to tolerate it, doesn't like it, whatever, shut up. Fine, okay, you don't like it. Fine, no problem. You don't like Kabbalah, no problem. The fact that the majority think it's holy, the fact that the majority accept it as authentic, how is it affecting you? How is it changing your life? You understand? So that's the thing. It's people are just silly. Their ego is so big. Their ego is so big, they can't even have enough room to be in a room with their own ego. You know, that's really what it comes down to. It's just ego. Just ego. That's really all it comes down to. That's the thing that people can't fix. They cannot fix their ego. All of these people that badmouth the Zohar, badmouth Kabbalah, badmouth Musar, badmouth Kiruv rabbis, just those types of people, it's all because of their ego. It's all, the root of the problem is their ego. Why? They need to be the center of the attention. They don't like to change. They don't want to be told what to do. Because if they're wrong, that means that they have to change their entire life. You know, and some of these people swear that they're poskim. You know, they tell you, oh yeah, no, I looked at the halakha and I did a psak this way. What do you mean you did a psak? We haven't had a psak in 500 years. What are you talking about psak? What psak did you do? What halakha? We don't have halachot today. The last poskim were 500 years ago. What psak did you do? What are you talking about? You pasak? You are pasak? Who are you, you little worm, you little ant? You're not even enough to be a grain on the bottom of Rabbi Yosef Kalo's shoe. What psak did you do? Who are you? No, I don't agree with Rashi over here. I don't agree with Rambam. I don't agree with... Who are you? What's wrong with you? It's all ego. It's all ego. It's that people swear that they could be Rabbi Akiva. Swear that Moshe Rabbeinu and them are boys. Swear that they could be, potentially they're on the Mashiach. They look in the mirror and they pat themselves on the back. I'm the Mashiach. Mamash, I'm telling you. It's not just the crazy people that send me emails. It's these people too. People swear they're the Mashiach. Swear they are God's given, God's gift to the world. It's ego. It's all ego. Sad, because it's the first people that get punished. The first people. That's actually in Proverbs. Hashem specifically says the people that have ego, He punishes them here, and He's not going to forgive them. He specifically says an actual verse about it. He's specifically not going to forgive them. Why? Because it's disgusting. When you have an ego, that means you think that you're more than what you are, meaning you've made yourself into a god. That's why Hashem specifically says, if he, someone that has gava, him and I cannot be in the same room. Why? He thinks he's God, and I am God. Can't be two gods in one place. So, all of these people with ego problems, they call themselves rabbis, they could be this, they could be that. It doesn't make a difference. At the end of the day, you got to look at what Hashem thinks. And Hashem says that your ego has to disappear. To take it, throw it in the garbage. You still have an ego, you still think that you could call everybody out and make fun of people, make fun of the holy sages. You're a fool. Go against Kiruv, you're a fool. It's just as simple as it gets. There's a lot of fools out there. And that's by the way, you should know, people that make jokes, joke around, especially during Shiurei Torah. The Gemara in Masechet Avodah Zarah says, it's sad for them. Rabbi Eliezer ben Holkino says it's sad for those people that make jokes. Why? The beginning is suffering, the end is destruction. Meaning Hashem doesn't like it so much when people make jokes in Shiurei Torah to ruin a shiur and so on, or go against Shiurei Torah, make fun of it, comments online to get people's attention off of it and so on. So much so that he says the beginning of their punishment is suffering, the end of their punishment is total destruction. So, I mean, it's just, all of this stuff is sourced in the Gemara, all of it is in the Rambam and different places. It's not made up, it's not opinion. People that want to listen, B'ezrat Hashem they'll do tshuva. People that don't want to listen, fine, they'll be proven the hard way. Right? It's no skin off my back. At least you told them, try. You try to tell them, we'd love for everybody to do tshuva. But if somebody has a heart of stone, they don't want to do tshuva, they deserve everything they're going to get. Everything they're going to get.
It was said that Rivka went to a prayer about what was going on between Esau and Yaakov while she was still pregnant. How is it that Yitzhak as the patriarch didn't know about what was going on as the two nations fighting?
How come Yitzhak doesn't know?
Yeah, he did not know about the prophecy that Rivka received.
Because different people have different prophecy. Just like I get a chidush in one pasuk, you get a different chidush of a different pasuk. That's because not all prophecy is the same. The Shmona Plakim, Rambam wrote in chapter 7, says that each one of the prophets had different levels of prophecy based on their character traits. So for example, the things that Moshe Rabbeinu wrote, the 5 books of Moses, are very clear and easy to understand, relatively speaking. And the reason why is because he perfected his character traits, and his prophecy was as clear as could ever be. On the other hand, the last prophet we had, which is Ezekiel, the prophecy that he gave at the end of times, the Bet HaMikdash, and so on, it's mystical, it's great, it's wonderful, but it's virtually impossible to understand. It's virtually impossible to understand. So it's chas v'shalom, it's not to speak negatively about the prophet Ezekiel. We cannot even be a fingernail on him. But the point being is that you could clearly see what the Rambam is saying here is that his level of prophecy was much lower than the prophecy that Moshe Rabbeinu had. So different prophecy, different level. Different prophets, different prophecies. Also, the prophecy that Ezekiel got about the end of times, even though it's very similar time frame and prophecy than the prophecy that Isaiah got, Isaiah's prophecy is clearer to understand. It's clearer to understand why he was an earlier prophet, and his prophecy was clearer. So again, sometimes we have the same event being prophesied to two different prophets, but one prophet's prophecy is clearer than the other, or one prophecy says different details that weren't provided to the other. So prophecy is not like a reading a verse in a book where everyone would understand the basic meaning of the verse. Prophecy is in essence a conversation with God through different mediums, either through meditation or some type of epilepsy or something like that, or some type of a dream, with the exception of Moshe Rabbeinu, which spoke to Hashem while he was awake, like you and I are speaking right now. So different prophets, different prophecies, different level of prophecy. And by the way, it all has, according to the Rambam in Shmona Prakim, chapter 7, it all has to do with the level of their character traits, their midot. The more a person perfected their midot, the better their prophecy was. Not the more Gemara they learned. Not the more pilpulim and mental stimulation they had. Not the more alachot they knew. The more they perfected their midot, the more they perfected their character traits, meaning the more they glued themselves to Hashem through musar and yirat shamayim. The more they glued to Hashem with musar and yirat shamayim, which of course means they knew alachot, and of course they knew all these other things, but the ikar was applying all of these things to their character traits. There's plenty of people that know alachot but don't know how to behave. I'll give you an example. I went to a Beit Knesset and two guys start arguing. And